The message notification appeared at 11:38 p.m. on a Tuesday. Pastor Michael Stevens, lying in bed next to his sleeping wife Jennifer, felt his phone vibrate on the nightstand. He shouldn't check it. Knew he shouldn't. It was late. Jennifer was asleep. He should be asleep. But he reached for it anyway. Muscle memory. Addiction. Need. The screen glowed in the darkness. One new message from Office Admin. The contact name he'd saved her under. Safe, professional, unassuming. But her real name was Stephanie. And she wasn't just Office Admin. She was complicated. Michael, glancing at Jennifer to make sure she was still asleep, unlocked his phone, opened the message. Still awake? Can't sleep. Thinking about our conversation today, about Mark 12, about giving God everything. You really challenged me. Thank you for that. For seeing me. For understanding me. Nobody else does. Good night, Pastor. Sleep well. S. Michael, his heart racing, his thumb hovering over the keyboard, wanted to respond. Wanted to say something back. Something that would keep the conversation going. Keep the connection alive. Keep the feeling that someone understood him. But Jennifer shifted beside him, turned toward him in her sleep, and guilt crashed over him like a wave. Michael, putting the phone face down on the nightstand, closed his eyes, tried to sleep, but couldn't. Because this was the problem. This was the secret. This was the thing that was slowly destroying him. For 6 months he'd been having this relationship. Not physical, never physical. He hadn't touched her, hadn't kissed her, hadn't crossed that line. But emotional? Yes, absolutely, deeply, dangerously. Text messages. Dozens every day. Hundreds over 6 months. Conversations that went deeper than anything he discussed with Jennifer. Sharing thoughts, feelings, struggles, dreams. Things he'd stopped sharing with his wife years ago. Or maybe never had. Stephanie understood him, saw him, not as Pastor Michael Stevens, senior pastor of Grace Community Church, megachurch leader with 5,000 members, conference speaker, author of 2 books on marriage and family, but as Michael, just Michael. Flawed, struggling, human. And he was addicted to that feeling, to being seen, to being understood, to feeling alive. Even though he knew it was wrong, knew it was betrayal, knew it was exactly what he preached against every Sunday, exactly what he'd counseled dozens of couples about, exactly what destroyed marriages. Emotional affairs, the kind that sneak up, the kind that feel innocent, the kind that never technically cross the physical line, but destroy trust and intimacy and marriage just the same. Michael, lying there in the dark, listening to Jennifer breathe, felt like the world's biggest hypocrite. Because tomorrow was Wednesday, staff meeting at 9 a.m., where he'd see Stephanie, where they'd have their brief hallway conversation, where she'd give him that look, the one that said she saw him, really saw him, and where he'd feel that rush, that connection, that addiction. And then Sunday he'd stand in front of 5,000 people, preach about integrity, about faithfulness, about walking in the light, about being who you claim to be, all while hiding the biggest lie of his life. My name is Michael Stevens. I'm 45 years old, senior pastor of Grace Community Church in Irvine, California. Megachurch, 5,000 members, 3 Sunday services, multi-million-dollar campus, staff of 48, television broadcast, podcast with 100,000 downloads per episode. Success. By every measure, success. I've been in ministry 22 years. Started as youth pastor at a small church in Oregon. Met Jennifer there. She was worship leader. Beautiful, talented, passionate about God. We dated for 2 years. Got married. I was 26. She was 24. Young, idealistic, in love. We had big dreams. Change the world, impact thousands, build God's kingdom. And we did. We moved to California. I became associate pastor at a growing church, then lead pastor. The church exploded. Grew from 300 to 5,000 in 8 years. Books, conferences, media appearances. I became someone. Pastor Michael Stevens, influencer, leader, voice in evangelical Christianity. But somewhere in the growth, in the success, in the platform, I lost something. Lost Jennifer. Lost intimacy. Lost real connection. We became business partners, co-leaders, running a church like a corporation, board meetings, budget discussions, strategic planning, event coordination, always working, always building, always busy. But when did we last really talk, really connect, really see each other? I couldn't remember. honestly couldn't remember the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about the church, about the kids, about logistics, about schedule. We had 3 children: Madison, 21, in college; Tyler, 19, also in college; Emma, 16, high school. Good kids, raised in the church, public face of pastoral family. Perfect, polished, presentable, but distant, at least from me. They saw Jennifer, talked to her, connected with her. But me? I was always working, always preparing sermons, always meeting with leaders, always too busy. I'd become the stereotype: successful pastor, failed husband, absent father, man who saved everyone else's marriage while losing his own. And then, Stephanie. She'd joined the staff 18 months ago, administrative assistant, 29 years old, single, smart, passionate about ministry, enthusiastic, fresh. At first, it was just work, professional. She took notes in meetings, scheduled appointments, managed my calendar, efficient, helpful, nothing more. But then, small conversations, in hallways, after meetings. She'd ask about sermons, about theology, about ministry philosophy, and I'd answer, engage, teach. And those conversations became longer, deeper, more frequent. She started texting, ministry questions, sermon feedback, prayer requests, and I responded, always, immediately, because it felt good to be asked, to be valued, to be heard. And then, 6 months ago, it shifted. The conversations became personal. She shared her story, her pain, her broken family, her abusive ex-boyfriend, her struggle with God, her questions, her doubts. And I listened, counseled, supported, as a pastor should. But then I started sharing too, my struggles, my pressures, my loneliness, my feeling of being trapped in a role, of being a character instead of a person. And she understood, really understood, didn't judge, didn't pull away, didn't tell me to just pray more or try harder, just understood. And I became addicted to being understood, to being seen, to feeling known. The text messages increased, morning, noon, night, not about work anymore, about life, about feelings, about connection. And I knew it was wrong, knew it was an emotional affair, knew I was betraying Jennifer. Even without physical touch, even without a kiss, this was betrayal. This was adultery of the heart. But I couldn't stop, didn't want to stop, because this connection, this feeling of being alive, it was the only thing making me feel human in a world where I had to be perfect. Jennifer didn't know, hadn't asked, hadn't noticed, or maybe she had and chose not to confront it. Either way, we existed in this strange space, married but not connected, together but alone, partners in ministry but strangers in life. And I stood in front of thousands every Sunday, preached about marriage, about faithfulness, about integrity, about living in the light, while hiding in darkness, while being exactly what I warned against, while becoming the hypocrite I'd always despised. And tomorrow the church board was meeting to discuss something big, something that would require my full attention, full integrity, full leadership. But how could I lead when I was living a lie? How could I preach truth when I was hiding falsehood? How could I call others to faithfulness when I was unfaithful? I couldn't, but I would, because that's what I did. I performed, I preached, I led, while dying inside. Wednesday morning, 8:55 a.m. Michael, walking into the church conference room, carrying his coffee and iPad, saw the staff already gathering. 12 people, executive team, worship pastor, youth pastor, children's ministry director, outreach director, operations manager, communications director, and several administrative staff, including Stephanie. She was already seated, halfway down the table, looking at her phone. Professional outfit, navy blue dress, hair pulled back, beautiful, always beautiful. Michael, taking his seat at the head of the table, made eye contact with everyone. Brief, professional. When you looked at Stephanie, she smiled. Small, knowing. And he felt that rush, that connection, that feeling of being seen. Jennifer wasn't there. She used to attend staff meetings, years ago, but as the church grew, she'd pulled back, focused on women's ministry, leading Bible studies, counseling, her own sphere, separate from his. Michael, opening his iPad, calling the meeting to order, says, "Good morning, everyone. Let's start with prayer, then we'll go through the agenda." He prayed. Brief, professional. blessed the staff, the ministry, the day. Amen. The meeting proceeded. Reports from each department, numbers, attendance, growth, challenges, standard weekly update. Michael engaged, asked questions, provided direction, led. But part of his mind, part of his attention was on Stephanie, aware of her presence, aware when she spoke, aware when she looked at him, hyper-aware. Addiction. After an hour, the meeting ended. People stood, gathered things, dispersed to their offices. Michael, staying seated, checking emails on his iPad, waited. And as the room emptied, as the last person left, Stephanie, walking slowly, organizing papers, lingered. When they were alone, she approached, stood next to his chair, close but not touching. Professional distance, but energy, undeniable energy. Stephanie, her voice soft, says, "Your sermon last Sunday was incredible. The part about being authentic with God, about bringing our whole selves. I needed that. Thank you." Michael, looking up at her, says, "I'm glad it resonated. That's always the goal, to speak truth that connects." Stephanie says, "You always do. With me at least. You always see me. Really see me. I don't know how you do that, but thank you." Michael, feeling the pull, the connection, the danger, says, "You make it easy. You're open, honest, real. It's refreshing in a world where everyone wears masks." Stephanie, her eyes holding his, says, "You wear a mask too sometimes, the pastor mask. But with me, in our conversations, you take it off, and I see Michael, not Pastor Stevens, just Michael. And I like him. A lot." Michael felt his heart racing. This was the line, the moment where it could cross, where emotional became physical, where inappropriate became disaster. He should stand, should step back, should end this, should confess to Jennifer, should resign, should do something, anything to stop this. But he didn't. He just sat there, looking at her, feeling seen, feeling alive, feeling wanted. And then, the door opened. And Tom Harrison, the worship pastor, walked back in, says, "Sorry, Pastor, forgot my notebook." "Oh, hi, Stephanie." The moment broke. Stephanie stepped back, smiled professionally, says, "No problem. I was just leaving. See you later, Pastor." She left. Tom grabbed his notebook, left. And Michael, alone in the conference room, sat there. His phone buzzed. Text from Stephanie. "Sorry we got interrupted. I wasn't done saying what I wanted to say. Can we talk later? Maybe coffee after work? S." Michael, his thumb hovering, knowing he should say no, knowing this was the moment to end it, typed back. "Sure. 4 p.m. The Starbucks on Main. See you then." He sent it, and immediately felt guilt, shame, self-loathing, but also anticipation, excitement, need. Because he was addicted, and addicts don't stop. Not without intervention, not without consequences, not without hitting bottom. And Michael hadn't hit bottom yet. Or so he thought. That evening, 7 p.m., Michael, sitting in the church boardroom, faced the 8 board members, church elders, leaders, men and women who'd built this church alongside him, who trusted him, respected him, followed him. David Chen, board chairman, 62 years old, successful businessman, says, "Pastor Michael, thank you for meeting with us. We know it's been a long day, but we have something important to discuss." Michael says, "Of course, what's on your mind?" David, glancing at the other board members, says, "We've been approached by New Life Network. They want to bring Grace Community into their network, multi-site model. Our church would be the flagship. You'd be the lead pastor of the network, oversight of 10 churches, eventually 20. Your teaching broadcast to all of them, your leadership multiplied." Michael, surprised, says, "Wow, that's huge. When did this conversation start?" David says, 3 months ago. We've been in preliminary discussions, vetting the opportunity, praying, seeking counsel, and we believe, unanimously, that this is a God-ordained opportunity to expand your ministry, impact thousands more, take your gift to the next level." Another board member, Susan Martinez, says, "Your books, your podcast, your teaching, it's already reaching hundreds of thousands. But this could reach millions. Think of the impact, the kingdom advancement." Michael felt the weight, the opportunity, the platform, the success, everything he'd worked for, multiplied, expanded, maximized. But also, the pressure, the scrutiny, the visibility. Because with expansion came examination, background checks, financial audits, moral inventories, due diligence. Michael carefully says, "This is incredible, truly, but it's also big, life-changing. I'd need time to pray, to discuss with Jennifer, to make sure it's right." David says, "Of course, we're not asking for an immediate answer, but we do need to move relatively quickly. New Life wants a decision within 60 days, and part of that decision-making process, they require interviews, character references, background reviews, standard procedure for leadership at this level." Michael felt his stomach drop. Background reviews, character references, interviews with staff, with family, with anyone who knew him closely. Stephanie. They'd interview Stephanie, and what would she say about the texts, about the emotional connection, about the relationship? And Jennifer. They'd interview Jennifer, and what would she say, if she even knew, if she had any idea? Michael, forcing a smile, says, "That all makes sense. Accountability is important. I'll take this to prayer, discuss it with Jennifer, and we'll go from there." David, standing, extending his hand, says, "We believe in you, Pastor. God has blessed your ministry, and we believe he's calling you to this next level. We're excited to see what he does." They prayed. Brief, blessing, guidance. Then the board left. And Michael, alone in the room, sat there, staring at his phone, at the message from Stephanie, still unanswered. Because he hadn't gone to coffee, had texted her, said the board meeting came up, had to cancel, rain check. And she'd responded, "No problem, another time, praying for your meeting, S." Praying. She was praying for him, while being the very thing that would destroy him if this opportunity moved forward. Michael, running his hands through his hair, feeling the walls closing in, says to the empty room, "What have I done? What am I doing?" But he didn't have an answer, just guilt, shame, fear, and the terrifying realization that he was about to be exposed, that truth always comes to light, that secrets always get revealed, that lies always catch up, and he had no idea what to do about it. 2 weeks later, Thursday morning, Michael, in his office preparing for Sunday's sermon, heard a knock. Michael says, "Come in." The door opened. Jennifer, standing there, face pale, eyes red, holding her phone. Michael, standing immediately, concerned, says, "Honey, what's wrong? Are you okay?" Jennifer, walking in, closing the door behind her, says, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest, completely honest." Michael, his heart rate accelerating, says, "Okay, what is it?" Jennifer, holding up her phone, says, "Who is office admin in your contacts? And why do you have 687 text messages with this person in the last 3 months?" Michael felt the room tilt, felt his breath catch, felt everything he'd feared, everything he'd avoided, everything he'd denied, crashing down. Jennifer, her voice shaking, says, "I saw, last night, your phone. You left it on the counter, and it kept buzzing, over and over. Messages from office admin. And I looked. I shouldn't have, I know, but I looked, and I read. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to know that this isn't just work. This is something else." Michael, trying to find words, trying to explain, says, "Jennifer, I can explain. It's not what you think. It's not. We haven't. We've never. There's nothing physical, I swear." Jennifer, tears falling now, says, "Don't. Don't you dare minimize this. Don't you dare tell me it's nothing. I read the messages, Michael. You understand me like no one else. I think about you constantly. You make me feel alive. That's not nothing. That's an affair. Maybe not physical, but emotional, which is worse, because you gave her your heart, the part that was supposed to be mine." Michael, stepping toward her, says, "Jennifer, please, let me explain. It started innocently, work conversations, ministry discussions, but it became something else. And I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop, because I felt so alone, so disconnected from you, from us. And she listened, she understood, and I was weak. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Jennifer, stepping back, says, "So this is my fault? Because I didn't listen enough? Didn't understand enough? You cheated on me, and now you're blaming me?" Michael says, "No, that's not what I'm saying. This is my fault, my failure, my sin, not yours, never yours. I'm trying to explain. Not excuse, just explain. Jennifer says, "Who is she?" Office admin. "Who is she really?" Michael, knowing there was no way out, says, "Stephanie. Stephanie Moore, administrative assistant. She's on staff." Jennifer, her face changing from pain to fury, says, "Stephanie? The 29-year-old? The one who looks at you like you're God? The one who's always around, always available, always there? Her?" Michael says, "Yes." Jennifer says, "How long?" Michael says, 6 months. Talking, texting, nothing physical, I swear. Never touched her, never kissed her, never crossed that line. Jennifer says, "But you crossed every other line. You gave her intimacy, connection, attention, time, things you stopped giving me years ago. You made her your emotional wife, while I was, what, your business partner? Your prop? The woman who stands next to you on stage while you pretend our marriage is perfect?" Michael says, "It's not like that. I love you. I do. I've always loved you." Jennifer says, "No. You love the idea of me, pastor's wife, mother of your children, face of the ministry. But me? The real me? When's the last time you actually saw me, Michael? Asked about my day, my struggles, my dreams? When?" Michael says, I don't. I've been busy. The church, the ministry, it's demanding." Jennifer says, "And she wasn't? Texting her hundreds of times, meeting her for coffee, having deep conversations? That wasn't demanding? You had time for her, just not for me." Silence. Heavy. Painful. True. Jennifer says, does she know? About the board? About New Life Network? About the opportunity? Michael, confused, says, "No. Why?" Jennifer says, "Because I do. David called me, yesterday, as courtesy, to make sure I was on board, before they moved forward. And I said yes, because I thought we were a team. I thought our marriage was solid. I thought you were the man you pretend to be on Sundays. But I was wrong." Michael says, "What are you saying?" Jennifer says, "I'm saying this can't happen. New Life Network, national platform, expanded ministry. Not like this. Not with this secret. Not with this lie. You need to confess, to the board, to the church, to everyone. And you need to end this, with Stephanie, completely, immediately. And you need to decide, what matters more, your career or your marriage?" Michael, panicking, says, "Jennifer, please, if I confess, to the board, to the church, it's over. My ministry, my career, everything I've built, everything we've built, gone. Is that what you want?" Jennifer, looking at him with disappointment deeper than anger, says, "What I want is a husband who chooses truth over lies, integrity over image, me over her. Can you be that man? Or have you become someone I don't even recognize?" She turned, walked to the door, stopped, didn't look back, says, "You have until Sunday to decide. Confess, end it, make this right, or I'm done. I'll file for divorce. I'll tell the board myself, and I'll make sure everyone knows that the great Pastor Michael Stevens is a fraud." She left, the door closing, Michael alone, in his office, surrounded by books on marriage, family, leadership, integrity, all written by him, all lies, all condemnation. He collapsed into his chair, put his face in his hands, and for the first time in years, really cried. Not performed tears, not manipulated emotion, real, gut-wrenching, broken, crying. Because he'd lost her. Maybe already had. Maybe years ago. But now it was real. Now it was visible. Now it was undeniable. And he had a choice. Truth or lies. Confession or concealment. Integrity or image. And he didn't know, honestly didn't know, which one he'd choose. Friday morning, Michael, having barely slept, sat in his office, phone in hand, staring at a message to Stephanie that he'd written, deleted, rewritten, deleted again. He needed to end it, knew he needed to end it. Jennifer had demanded it. God required it. His marriage depended on it. But part of him, the broken, lonely, addicted part, didn't want to. Because ending it with Stephanie meant facing the emptiness, the disconnection, the loneliness he'd been medicating with her attention. Finally, after an hour, he typed, "Stephanie, we need to talk. In person. Today. My office, noon. It's important. Michael." He sent it. No more Pastor Michael. Just Michael. Because that's who he'd been with her. not the pastor, just the man, the broken, failing man. She responded within seconds. Okay, I'll be there. Is everything all right? S. Michael didn't respond because everything wasn't all right. Nothing was all right, and it was about to get worse. At noon, Stephanie arrived, knocked on his office door, came in, smiling, expecting another one of their deep conversations, another connection moment. But Michael's face, his expression, his energy was different, and she noticed immediately. Stephanie, concerned, says, "Michael, what's wrong? You look terrible." Michael, gesturing to the chair, says, "Sit down, please." She sat, fear now replacing concern. Michael, diving in because there was no easy way, says, "Jennifer knows about us, about the texts, about everything. She saw my phone, read the messages, and she gave me an ultimatum. End this. Confess to the board. Make it right. Or she's leaving, filing for divorce, exposing everything." Stephanie, her face going pale, says, "Oh God. Oh no. Michael, I'm so sorry. I never meant to. I didn't want to destroy your marriage." Michael says, "I know. This isn't your fault. It's mine. I'm the married one. I'm the one in leadership. I'm the one who crossed the line. This is on me." Stephanie says, "So what are you saying? That we can't talk anymore? Can't be friends?" Michael says, "Stephanie, we were never just friends. You know that. I know that. This was an emotional affair. I betrayed my wife. I betrayed my calling. I betrayed God. And I need to end it. Completely. No more texts. No more conversations. No more us." Stephanie, tears forming, says, "But I care about you. I thought you cared about me too." Michael, his voice breaking, says, "I do. That's the problem. I care about you. In a way I shouldn't. In a way that's destroying my marriage, my ministry, everything. And I can't keep doing this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But it has to end." Stephanie, crying now, says, "So that's it? Just done? After 6 months? After everything we shared?" Michael says, "What we shared wasn't right, wasn't healthy, wasn't ours to share. I'm married. I made vows to Jennifer before God, and I broke them. Not physically, but emotionally, which is just as bad, maybe worse. And I need to fight for my marriage, which means letting you go." Stephanie stood, grabbed a purse, says, "I understand. I do. And I'm sorry for my part, for not stopping it, for encouraging it. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't care, because I felt something with you, something I'd never felt, and I wanted it, even knowing it was destroying you." Michael says, "We both did. We're both guilty. But now it stops. And I think you should consider finding another job, another church, because we can't work together, not after this. It's not fair to you, or to Jennifer, or to anyone." Stephanie, nodding, says, "You're right. I'll submit my resignation today, and I'll be gone by the end of the week." Michael says, "Thank you. And Stephanie, I am sorry for hurting you, for using you, for being weak." Stephanie, at the door, says, "You're not weak. You're human. And maybe this will save you, force you to fix what's really broken. Your marriage, not me. That was never broken. It was always wrong. But your marriage, that's worth saving. Fight for it." She left, and Michael, alone again, felt something shift. Relief? Regret? Both? He didn't know. But it was done. That part, at least, was done. But the harder part, confession, that remained. Sunday morning, Michael, standing backstage, waiting to go on, heard the worship team finishing the last song. 5,000 people, in 3 services, all waiting to hear him preach, all trusting him, following him, believing in him. Jennifer was in the front row, had insisted, sat with the kids, all of them, united front. But also, witnesses to whatever he was about to do, because Michael had decided, Friday night, After Stephanie left, after hours of prayer, of wrestling, of crying, he'd decided. He was going to confess. Not all the details, not publicly humiliate Stephanie, but confess his failure, his sin, his hypocrisy, and face whatever consequences came. The worship ended, the lights shifted, his cue. Michael walked onto the stage. The congregation applauded, stood, cheered, because they loved him, respected him, trusted him, and he was about to break that trust. Michael, standing at the pulpit, looking out at thousands of faces, says, "Good morning, Grace Community. Please, sit down." They sat, eager, expectant, waiting for inspiration, encouragement, teaching. Michael, gripping the pulpit, says, "This morning, I had a sermon prepared about David, King David, and his sin with Bathsheba, about how even great leaders fail, about how even men after God's own heart fall, about how sin progresses from look to lust to action to cover-up to consequence." He paused, looked at Jennifer. She was watching, waiting. The kids looked confused, Madison especially, sensing something was wrong. Michael, continuing, says, "But as I prepared, as I studied, God convicted me, because I was going to preach about David's sin while hiding my own. I was going to call others to integrity while living in hypocrisy. And I can't. I can't do that anymore." Murmurs rippled through the congregation. Confusion, concern. What was he saying? Michael, his voice shaking, says, "I need to confess something. To you, to my family, to God. I have failed. As a husband, as a pastor, as a man. I have been in an emotional affair with someone. Not physical, but emotional, which is just as damaging, just as sinful, just as destructive." Gasps, audible gasps, shock, the room erupting in whispers. Michael, pressing on, says, "I betrayed my wife. I betrayed your trust. I betrayed my calling. And I have been living a lie, preaching about marriage while destroying my own, teaching about integrity while living in deception. And I'm so sorry. To Jennifer, to my kids, to this church, to God. I'm so sorry." But before he could continue, before he could say more, something happened. The lights began to change, dimming, slowing. The murmurs from the congregation stretching, deepening, distorting. Michael, gripping the pulpit tighter, looking around, says, What's happening?" And everything stopped. The congregation, 5,000 people, frozen, mid-reaction, some with mouths open in shock, some with faces of judgment, some with expressions of compassion, all frozen. Michael, still at the pulpit, still able to move, looked around in confusion and terror. The lights stopped flickering. The sound system, silent. The air itself, still. Time, frozen. Michael, his voice echoing in the silence, says, "God? Is this you?" And then, the voice. The same voice he'd heard stories about, from people who'd had divine encounters. Deep, resonant, undeniable. "You confessed, but only after being caught." Michael, defensive, says, I swear, I was going to confess." "Were you? Or were you hoping to hide it until Jennifer forced your hand, until consequences became inevitable?" Michael says, "I don't know, maybe I would have kept hiding, but I'm confessing now, that counts, doesn't it?" Come, see something. See someone who was confronted, who had to face truth against his will, and the church, the stage, the congregation, all dissolved. David and Nathan. Michael blinked. He was no longer on stage, no longer in California, no longer in the 21st century. Heat, desert heat, stone walls, palace, ancient palace, Jerusalem, Israel. 1,000 years before Christ. Michael, invisible, observed a throne room, ornate, gold, purple tapestries, luxury, power, wealth. And on the throne, a man, middle-aged, bearded, crown, robes. King David, the man after God's own heart, the warrior, the psalmist, the anointed one. But his face, troubled, guilty, haunted. A man entered, old, prophet's clothes, simple robe, staff, piercing eyes. Nathan, the prophet, God's spokesman. Nathan approached the throne, bowed slightly, but his energy, not subservient, authoritative, speaking for God, not for the king. Nathan says, "Your Majesty, I need your judgment on a matter, a legal case." David, interested, says, "Speak, what is the case?" Nathan says, "There were two men in a certain town. One was rich, owned many sheep and cattle, flocks and herds beyond counting. The other was poor, had nothing, except one little lamb, just one, that he'd bought and raised. It grew up with his children, ate from his hand, drank from his cup, slept in his arms, like a daughter to him." David listened, engaged, picturing the scene. Nathan, continuing, says, "Then a traveler came to the rich man, and the rich man, instead of taking from his own flock to prepare a meal for his guest, he took the poor man's lamb, the only one he had, slaughtered it, and prepared it for his visitor." David, standing, furious, says, "As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this deserves to die. How could he, taking the poor man's only lamb, having so much himself? He must pay 4 times over, and his life is forfeit." Nathan looked directly at David, raised his finger, pointed, and spoke 2 words that changed everything. Nathan, his voice like thunder, says, "You are the man." David froze. Michael, watching, felt the impact, the accusation, the truth, undeniable, devastating. Nathan, continuing, says, "You are that rich man. God gave you everything, the kingdom, wealth, wives, power, everything. But Uriah had one wife, one beloved wife, Bathsheba, and you took her, not from your own house, but from his, and then, to cover your sin, you had him killed, murdered, so you could have what was his." Michael, watching David's face, saw it crumble, saw the realization, the guilt, the shame, the horror of seeing himself clearly, for the first time, through God's eyes. David, collapsing, not on the throne but on the floor, says, "I have sinned against the Lord. I have sinned." Nathan says, "The Lord has taken away your sin. You will not die. But because you have shown utter contempt for the Lord by doing this, the consequences will be severe. The sword will never depart from your house, and the child, born from this sin, will die." David, weeping now, says, "What have I done? How could I? How could I be so blind?" But Michael saw that David hadn't been blind, had known all along, had known taking Bathsheba was wrong, had known murdering Uriah was evil, but had done it anyway, because he wanted, because he could, because power corrupts, because even men after God's own heart fall. And God sent Nathan to confront, to expose, to force confession, because David wouldn't have confessed on his own, would have kept hiding, kept lying, kept covering up, until someone spoke truth. "You are the man." The scene shifted. Michael saw glimpses. David's life after, the baby, dying, just as Nathan said. David's son Amnon, raping his sister Tamar. David's son Absalom, killing Amnon, then rebelling against David, nearly taking the kingdom, then dying in battle. The consequences, severe, lasting, generational. Not because God was vindictive, but because sin has consequences, always. And leadership sin has public consequences, visible consequences, that affect everyone. Michael watched David. Years later, old, dying, still carrying the weight, still living with the consequences, still forgiven, but scarred. The scene began to fade. David, Nathan, ancient Israel, all dissolving. But the words remained, echoing. "You are the man," the voice returned. "You saw." Michael, shaking, says, "I saw." "What did you see?" Michael says, "I saw David, the greatest king, who sinned, who took another man's wife, murdered to cover it up, and was confronted by Nathan, who told him a story, made him judge his own sin, before revealing, 'You are the man.'" And David's response? Michael says, "He confessed, immediately, 'I have sinned against the Lord.'" He didn't make excuses, didn't blame Bathsheba, didn't minimize, just owned it. But would he have confessed, without Nathan, without confrontation? Michael says, "No, probably not. He'd been hiding it for months, since the baby was conceived, living the lie, just like me. You preached about David, about his sin, about his fall. But you were David, all along, weren't you? Michael, crying now, says, yes, I was David, rich man, taking what wasn't mine, while having so much. Jennifer, my wife, my covenant, but wanting more, wanting Stephanie, her attention, her understanding, her youth, taking what belonged to her future husband, to her emotional purity, being the rich man who had everything but took the poor man's lamb. And your confession today, was it like David's, genuine or forced? Michael says, forced. Jennifer caught me, gave me an ultimatum, so I confessed. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to, because consequences were coming, just like David, confronted by Nathan, only confessing when caught. Is that true confession or just damage control? Michael, feeling the weight, says, I don't know. I thought confessing publicly would make it right, would fix it. But you're saying it's not enough? Because it's forced? I'm asking, what would you have done without Jennifer catching you, without the board review looming? Would you have confessed or kept hiding? Michael, with devastating honesty, says, I would have kept hiding. I know that now. I was addicted to Stephanie, to feeling seen, to feeling alive, and I would have kept it going until it all exploded, because that's what sin does. It progresses. Look, lust, action, cover-up, disaster. I was halfway there and would have gone all the way if not stopped. Then what does that say about you, about your leadership, about your integrity? Michael says that I'm a fraud, that I've been preaching something I don't live, that I've been leading people while being led by sin, that I'm exactly what I despise, a hypocrite. And what do you do with that? Michael says, I don't know, resign, quit ministry, admit I'm not qualified, not worthy? David didn't quit. Even after Nathan, after exposure, after consequences, he remained king, continued leading, but different, broken, humbled, changed. Michael says, so what? I confess publicly, face consequences. But continue? How? Nobody will trust me. Nobody will follow me. Nobody will believe anything I say. Some will, some won't. But the question isn't about them. It's about you. Will you be like David, who truly repented, who wrote Psalm 51, create in me a clean heart, O God, who lived broken but real? Or will you be like Saul, who made excuses, blamed others, kept performing, until God rejected him? Michael says, I want to be David. I do, but I'm scared. Scared of losing everything. My ministry, my family, my reputation, everything. David lost everything too. His child, his family peace, his kingdom stability, his reputation. But he gained something. He gained honesty, authenticity, real relationship with God. Not performance, but brokenness. Not image, but truth. Michael says, and that's better? Losing everything to gain truth? Is living a lie better? Is performing better? Is being loved for someone you're not better? Or is being known, really known, despite failure, despite sin, and still loved? Isn't that better? Michael, understanding now, says, you're saying that what I've been doing, performing, preaching, projecting image, that's worse than the affair, because it's built on lies, built on pretending, built on being someone I'm not. Yes, the affair is sin, serious sin. But the performance, the image, the hypocrisy, that's the deeper disease. The affair was symptom. The real problem? You stopped being real. With Jennifer, with yourself, with God. You became Pastor Michael Stevens, character, role, persona, and buried Michael, the broken human who needs grace. Michael, with tears, says, so what do I do? How do I fix this? Stop performing. Start being honest. Real confession, not damage control. Real repentance, not image management. Real humility, not strategic vulnerability. Tell the whole truth, not just what you have to. Face full consequences, not just what's unavoidable. Be who you are, broken, failing, human. and let God. Build from that, not from image, but from rubble. Michael says, and if I lose everything? You'll lose what was built on lies and have a chance to build something real. Isn't that worth it? Michael, with new clarity, with terrifying freedom, says, yes. Yes, it is. The church returned, sound rushing back, the congregation murmuring, reacting, time resuming. Michael, still at the pulpit, looked at the clock. 10:43 a.m. When he'd looked before? 10:43 a.m. 7 seconds ago. 7 seconds. Nathan, David, truth, all in 7 seconds. Michael, gripping the pulpit, looking out at the shocked congregation, continued. Michael, his voice stronger now, more broken but more real, says, I confessed, but I need to be more honest. I didn't confess because I wanted to. I confessed because I was caught. My wife discovered the messages, confronted me, and I'm here. Not because I'm repentant, but because I'm scared. Scared of losing everything. More gasps, confusion. Why was he saying this? Why make it worse? Michael says, I've been playing a role. Pastor Michael Stevens, perfect leader, perfect husband, perfect Christian. But it's been a performance, a lie. And I'm done. I'm done pretending, done performing, done protecting my image. He looked at Jennifer. She was crying, but also nodding, slightly, encouraging. Stay honest. Keep going. Michael says, the board has offered me an opportunity. National platform, network leadership, expanded ministry. But I'm declining. Today, publicly, because I'm not qualified. Not because of the affair, but because I've been leading from a mask, not from reality. And that's worse than any sin. David Chen, board chairman, stood in the second row, looking shocked, says, Pastor Michael, we can discuss this privately. You don't need to. Michael, interrupting, says, yes, I do. Because private decisions led to public failures, and public confession is the only path back. I'm resigning as senior pastor, effective immediately. I need time to work on my marriage, my family, my soul, to figure out who Michael is, apart from the role, apart from the platform, apart from the performance. The congregation was silent now, shocked, processing, some crying, some angry, some relieved, all witnesses. Michael says, I'm sorry to everyone I've hurt, everyone I've let down, everyone I've lied to, by pretending to be something I wasn't. I'm sorry. And I'm going to get help, real help, counseling, accountability, rebuilding, and maybe someday I can lead again. But only if I become real, not just better at hiding. He stepped back from the pulpit, walked off stage, past the worship team, through the backstage area, out the side door. Jennifer, grabbing Madison and the younger kids, rushed after him. She found him, in the parking lot, leaning against his car, sobbing, really sobbing, not performed tears, real breakdown. Jennifer, approaching slowly, says, Michael? Michael, looking up, says, I resigned. I ended it. All of it. The affair, the job, the performance. I don't know. I don't know what happens now, but I couldn't keep lying. Jennifer, standing in front of him, says, what you did, in there, confessing fully, declining the opportunity, resigning, that was the most honest I've seen you in years, maybe ever. Michael says, I'm sorry for everything, for betraying you, for becoming someone you didn't recognize, for choosing image over intimacy. I'm so sorry. Jennifer says, I know, and I'm still angry, still hurt, still don't know if we'll survive this, but at least now you're being honest, and that's something. That's a start. Michael says, can we try to rebuild, to find what we lost, or maybe what we never had? Jennifer says, I don't know, but I'm willing to try. If you are, really try, not perform trying, but actually do the work. Michael says, I will, I promise. I'll do whatever it takes. Counseling, therapy, full disclosure, full accountability, whatever you need, whatever we need. Jennifer, reaching out, taking his hand, says, then let's go home and start. From truth, not from image, from brokenness, not from pretending, from who we really are, not who we're supposed to be. They walked, together, to the car and drove home. While behind them, In the church, the congregation processed, reacted, judged, grieved. Some would leave, some would stay, some would support, some would condemn. But Michael was free. For the first time in years, free from performance, free from lies, free from image, free to be broken. And broken was a better place to build from than pretending was. Michael, sitting in a small office across from Dr. Patricia Wells, marriage counselor, held Jennifer's hand. They'd been coming here twice a week for 6 months. Intensive marriage therapy, rebuilding, unpacking years of disconnection, of performance, of lost intimacy. It was hard, brutally hard, facing truth, admitting failures, his and hers. Because while Michael's affair was the crisis, the marriage problems went deeper, longer, both ways. Dr. Wells says, Michael, you said last week that you've been journaling about what drew you to Stephanie, what needs she filled. Can you share? Michael says, yeah, I've been realizing that I never learned how to be known, really known. I learned to perform, to achieve, to succeed, but to be vulnerable, to be seen in weakness, I didn't know how. And Jennifer, she's strong, capable, and I thought she didn't need me emotionally. So I stopped trying, stopped sharing, stopped being real. Jennifer says, and I thought you didn't want to share, that you were fine, self-sufficient. So I stopped asking, stopped pursuing. We both just stopped. Dr. Wells says, and Stephanie? Michael says, she asked, she pursued, she saw, and I was starving for that. So I said yes, over and over, not to sex, but to being known, which was actually worse, because I gave her my emotional intimacy, the thing that should have been Jennifer's. Jennifer says, and I'm learning that I need to ask for what I need, not wait, not expect you to read my mind. I need to pursue you, not just the ministry, not just the kids, but you, Michael, the man, not Pastor Stevens. They'd made progress, real progress, not fast, not easy, but real. They talked now, really talked, about feelings, needs, struggles, without performance, without masks. Michael hadn't returned to ministry, didn't know if he would, didn't know if he should. He'd been working, part-time, at a bookstore, minimum wage, humbling, but real. No platform, no title, just Michael, selling books, restocking shelves. And it was healing, being nobody, being known by Jennifer, by his kids, by a small group of broken people who met weekly to be honest about struggles, failures, humanity. 1 year after resigning, Michael received a call from David Chen, the board chairman. David says, Michael, how are you? Michael says, I'm better, honestly better. Not perfect, not healed, but better, more real. David says, I'm glad, and I wanted to tell you, the church, we've been healing too. New pastor, good man, authentic, real, different style than you, but good. And the congregation, they're learning that pastors are human, that perfection is performance, that brokenness is real. Michael says, I'm glad, really glad, and I'm sorry for the damage, for the mess I left. David says, you also left a gift, the gift of honesty, of showing that leaders are human, that failure doesn't mean the end, that truth is better than image. We're different now, more grace, less judgment, more real, less performance. And that's because of you, weird as that sounds. Michael, crying, says, thank you for that. I needed to hear that the destruction wasn't total, that something good came from it. David says, it did. And Michael, if you ever feel called back to ministry, we'd be open. Not as senior pastor, but maybe teaching, counseling, recovery ministry, something. Because your story, your brokenness, your honesty, that's powerful. That helps people. Not your image, but your reality. Michael says, thank you. I'll pray about it, but not yet. Not for a while. I'm still learning how to be Michael before being Pastor Michael. David says, good, that's good. Take your time. God's got you. 2 years after the confession, Michael, standing in a small room at a recovery center, looked at 15 men. sitting in a circle. Addicts, alcoholics, sex addicts, porn addicts, all broken, all in recovery, all needing truth. Michael, no longer Pastor Stevens, but just Michael, says, "My name is Michael, and I'm a recovering performance addict." The men looked at him, some confused. Performance addict? Michael says, "I spent 22 years performing, playing a role, pastor, leader, perfect Christian, and I was addicted to applause, to approval, to being seen as successful. And that addiction led me to betray my wife, my calling, myself. Because I couldn't be honest, couldn't be vulnerable, couldn't be broken, until I had no choice." He told his story, the affair, the confession, the resignation, the loss, the rebuilding, all of it. No performance, no spin, just truth. And the men listened, really listened, because this was real. Not a sermon, not a lesson, just one broken person sharing with other broken people. After the meeting, a young man, 23, approached, says, "Thank you for sharing. I'm in ministry, youth pastor, and I've been crossing lines emotionally with a volunteer, and I thought I was the only one. But hearing you, seeing that even pastors fail, that even leaders struggle, it gives me courage to confess, to get help, before I lose everything." Michael says, "Do it, now. Don't wait. Don't hide. The destruction from hiding is worse than the consequences from confessing. Trust me." The young man says, Will I lose my ministry?" Michael says, "Maybe, probably, but you'll find your soul, and that's worth more." The truth about hypocrisy is this: it's not the sin that destroys you, it's the hiding, it's the performance, it's the pretending to be someone you're not. David sinned terribly with Bathsheba, with Uriah. But when Nathan confronted him, when truth came, he confessed immediately, fully, "I have sinned against the Lord." And God forgave, not without consequences, but forgave. And David continued as king, but different, broken, real. Writing Psalm 51, the most honest prayer ever written, "Create in me a clean heart." Michael Stevens was David, had everything, but wanted more, took what wasn't his, betrayed his covenant, lived in deception, until Jennifer became Nathan, confronting, exposing, saying, "You are the man." And Michael had a choice: confession with excuses or confession with honesty, image management or image destruction, continue performing or become real. He chose real, and it cost him. Everything built on lies, his ministry, his platform, his reputation, his image. But he gained everything that matters: his marriage, his integrity, his soul, his humanity. 3 years after resigning, Michael and Jennifer, sitting on their couch, watching their youngest Emma graduate high school on TV, she was valedictorian, held hands. Emma, on screen, speaking to her class, says, "3 years ago, my dad, who was this big famous pastor, resigned, publicly, after confessing to failure, to sin, to hypocrisy. And I was embarrassed, angry, humiliated. My perfect dad wasn't perfect, and everyone knew." Michael and Jennifer watched, tense, not knowing what Emma would say next. Emma, continuing, says, "But now, 3 years later, I'm grateful, because I don't have a perfect dad. I have a real dad who talks to me, honestly, about struggles, about failures, about being human. And that's better than perfect. That's real. And real is what I want to be. Not perfect, just real." Michael, crying, squeezed Jennifer's hand. Jennifer, also crying, says, "She gets it. She really gets it." Michael says, "We almost destroyed her with our performance, with our image, with our lies. But by choosing truth, even when it hurt, we gave her something better, permission to be human." Jennifer says, Are you glad that it all fell apart, that you lost everything?" Michael, thinking, says, "No, not glad, but grateful. Weird as that sounds, because I lost. everything built on lies, and gained everything that matters. You, the kids, my soul, myself. And that's better than any platform, any success, any image. Jennifer says, I love you, Michael. Not Pastor Stevens. Michael, the broken man who's trying, really trying, to be real. Michael says, I love you too, and thank you for being my Nathan, for confronting me, for forcing truth, even when it hurt. You saved me by not letting me hide. They sat there, watching their daughter celebrate, not her father's success, but his honesty, and realized that the greatest sermon Michael ever preached wasn't on a stage with 5,000 people, but in his home, with his family, living truth instead of pretending. And that was ministry. Real ministry. Not performance, but presence. Not image, but intimacy. Not success, but surrender. Nathan told David, you are the man, and it destroyed David's image, but saved his soul. Jennifer told Michael, you are the man, and it destroyed his ministry, but saved his marriage. And both men, David and Michael, learned that truth in darkness is better than lies in light, that being known in failure is better than being admired in performance, that losing everything built on lies is gain when you find everything built on truth. The question isn't whether you'll fail. Everyone fails. The question is, will you hide it or confess it? Will you perform or be real? Will you protect your image or save your soul? Choose truth, always truth, even when it costs everything. Because everything built on lies isn't worth keeping, and everything built on truth can't be destroyed. You are the man. Yes, broken, failing, human. And that's okay. Because God doesn't need your performance. He wants your honesty, your brokenness, your reality. Give him that, and everything else will follow. This was Michael's story, but it's also yours. Because we all perform. We all hide. We all pretend to be something we're not. Stronger, better, more together than we really are. And we have a choice. Do we keep performing? Do we protect the image? Do we hide the failures? Or do we remember that Nathan confronted David, not to destroy him, but to save him? That exposure wasn't condemnation, it was rescue. You are the man. Those words destroyed David's image, but saved his soul. Michael Stevens learned that when Jennifer confronted him, when he could no longer hide, when the choice was truth or lies. And he chose truth, and it cost him everything, and gave him everything that mattered. Can you do the same? When you're hiding something? When you're performing something? When you're pretending to be someone you're not? Can you choose honesty? Can you risk the image? Can you let people see the real you, not the performed you? Because the real you, broken, failing, struggling, that's who God loves. Not the image, not the performance, not the mask. You are the man. You are the woman. Flawed, human, real. And that's okay. That's more than okay. That's loved. That's accepted. That's where God meets you. Not in your strength, but in your honesty. Not in your success, but in your surrender. Not in your image, but in your reality. Stop performing, start being real, and everything else will follow. If you're living a double life, hiding sin, performing instead of being real, you're not alone. And you don't have to keep hiding. Download the free ebook, You Are the Man, Living in Truth Instead of Image. Link in the description. This ebook includes complete study of David, Bathsheba, and Nathan, understanding emotional affairs and their damage, how to confess when you've been caught, rebuilding trust after betrayal, the difference between image and integrity, discussion questions for accountability groups, real stories of leaders who fell and recovered, steps to stop performing and start being real, resources for marriage recovery, support resources, American Association of Christian Counselors, www.aacc.net, Pure Desire Ministries, Sexual Integrity, Celebrate Recovery, Addiction Recovery, Marriage Helper, Crisis Marriages. Subscribe, share, and remember, truth in darkness is better than lies in light. You are the man. Those words destroyed David's image, but saved his soul. Michael Stevens learned that when Jennifer confronted him, when he could no longer hide, when the choice was truth or lies. and he chose truth. And it cost him everything, and gave him everything that mattered. Can you do the same when you're hiding something? When you're performing something? When you're pretending to be someone you're not? Can you choose honesty? Can you risk the image? Can you let people see the real you, not the performed you? Because the real you, broken, failing, struggling, that's who God loves. Not the image, not the performance, not the mask. You are the man. You are the woman. Flawed, human, real. And that's okay. That's more than okay. That's loved. That's accepted. That's where God meets you. Not in your strength, but in your honesty. Not in your success, but in your surrender. Not in your image, but in your reality.